Let's get started. So, welcome everyone to All In on Real Estate. I'm your host, Aaron Goins. I started this meetup because when I was in the military, no one in my circles talked about real estate. And I wanted to start a meetup where people can learn different niches of real estate and build generational wealth for them and them families. So I'm very, very excited for our guest speaker today, Miss Tiffany Ward. How you doing, Tiffany?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Aaron.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Could you please introduce yourself and tell everybody who is Tiffany Ward?
Oh, wow. So I'm Tiffany. I am based here in Richmond, Virginia. I am a mom. My son is 16 months today. I am a CrossFit coach and a CrossFitter. Been in CrossFit for about 5 or 6 years now. I have a motorcycle. I ride motorcycles. I skydive. I'm a adrenaline junkie. I used to do a coaster quest every year before COVID. I went to a different theme park. I am a W-2 employee currently in sales, technology sales. And I am always looking to grow my portfolio in multifamily. Quick bio before I jump in anything else. What else?
So that sounds like a previous guest speaker who liked to skydive and things like that. Is it a Richmond thing between y'all? She likes to skydive.
We get it done here in Richmond.
I guess so. I guess things have changed since I've been there years ago.
Richmond is popping.
That's awesome, right there. That's awesome. So tell us, why did you get into real estate? What was your origin story to get into real estate?
So I got into real estate at 23. Everybody asked me how long I've been in real estate. And I really don't count that because that was my first home. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I was tired of living in my parents' house and they had me on curfew at 22. And I didn't want to be a renter. So I bought a house at 23.
Shout out to old school parents putting you on lockdown at 22.
Oh, listen, I was paying rent. I paid my parents rent. They didn't let me live there free. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't like real rent, but enough to make you responsible. And they had me on curfew still. But yeah, I was on lockdown. But yeah, my sister actually owned a home 3 doors down, and she knew I was looking for a home. I had been with a realtor, and he was only showing me like townhomes and stuff like that. And my sister had found this single family home. It was a foreclosure HUD home. And I put in an offer. I actually offered more than I should have offered. I didn't know then I should have offered less. The realtor didn't advise me very well, but I got the house. The only thing I had to change was a few doors, a few locks on the doors, few doors, and carpet and paint. So the person who moved out, they didn't destroy it. It was pretty much move-in ready after a good cleaning. And I moved in my best friend a month later. So I was house hacking. I didn't know I was house hacking at the time, but I was house hacking because I didn't want to pay that mortgage all by myself. And then I got scared that I couldn't afford it. So I got 2 more jobs. So I was working 3 jobs, trying to make sure I could pay the bills. And I was also going to school, getting my master's from VCU at the time. So that was kind of my intro into real estate. Without knowing it, I was house hacking and bought a foreclosure.
So now looking back at it, what was your biggest takeaways from that diverse experience?
Back then, well, I knew to put a contract together or a lease with my best friend, also my tenant. So that worked out fine, really well. The person who moved in after me was here for about 7 years. I never raised the rent in 7 years. So my biggest lesson is raise the rent or get a property manager who will raise the rents for you. I also didn't do any maintenance over the years. I mean, things happen, right? So I had to replace the HVAC. I had to replace the dishwasher. I had to do some automated things around the house, but other than that, there was just a lot of deferred maintenance. So when I moved back, because I'm back in that house, I had to paint the whole house, replace floors, carpeting, replace refrigerators, just stuff hadn't been kept up at all in that time period. So I would just say like, for any long-term holds that you have, make sure that you are offering your tenant an incentive every year for renewing. So that could be painting. Oh, we'll paint one room for you. We'll get your carpets clean. Something like that will incentivize them to stay. It'll make it easier for you as well when you're turning over the units, such that you don't have as big of an expense on that term.
Okay, cool. So after this first purchase and everything went through, what was next? What was the next step after that?
So my next purchase, I moved to Northern Virginia for my job, my current job that I have, and I rented up there for a while. So I didn't make my next purchase until I got married and moved back home. So my first purchase was in 2010, and my next purchase was not until 2015. So a 5-year gap. I purchased a townhome for me and my then husband. I'm divorced now. Me and my then husband. And then we went on to purchase another bigger house that we would live in for a while. And so I still didn't know, and I still wasn't really diving into real estate. In that 5-year span, I went to Dan Merrill's like Fortune Builders thing, right? And so how they get you in is like you hear a radio ad and they say, oh, come to this thing for free. And once you get there for free, then they say, oh, well, get our system for $200, $100, right? So I went to that. I was like, oh, that's not bad, $100, $200. So I went to that, and it was like a 3-day weekend where they kind of take you through their systems, high level. You learn a little bit, but you don't learn enough to be dangerous. And then that's when they kind of drop the hammer and they're like, this program is 30 grand or whatever it was. I didn't pay for that. Because at the time I thought, I can learn this. I can figure it out. Like I can YouTube it. I can, read books. I can ask people. I'm not paying 30 grand, right? I wasn't about to pay that. So that was about all the foundation that I had. I had started listening to the Bigger Pockets in that time frame, but I really wasn't deploying any of that knowledge. So when I bought that house in 2015, I bought it pretty much because my husband told me to buy it. He was like, oh, buy this house. The thing that I learned with that purchase is that pretty much in that purchase, I did have an inspector, but they ignored a big crack in the wall. So this was a townhouse, and part of it was underground. It was a walkout basement. So in trying to sell that townhouse, I had to put $10,000 into it to secure that wall, because the wall was effectively like this. And the inspector told me it wasn't a big deal. Big crack in the wall. Oh, what's going on the wall? Oh, it's no issue. Okay. I should have got a second opinion. The other thing was that before I closed on that house, I was hit with flood insurance. And so I was about to close and they're like, where's your flood insurance? And I'm like, what flood insurance? So flood insurance is very pricey. I avoid flood insurance at all costs if I can. But between the HOA and the flood insurance, when I went to rent it, it was no longer a viable option. I wouldn't have made any money. I'd have been breaking even every month. So eventually, when I got divorced, I had to move back into that place, and that worked out well for me. But as a rental, it didn't work out well. So then fast forward to 2018, I bought a duplex. Again, I'm doing everything at this point with my own money, and I am living in it. So I am purchasing it as an owner occupant with 5% down. And then, that gives me the flexibility to live in it for a year and move, because I'm single. I don't have any kids at that time. So I bought the duplex in 2018. I lived in the top. It came with a tenant in the bottom. And then I sold that other townhouse because I couldn't make money on the rental. What else? Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Okay. So I guess we're going to just go down the road then.
Okay.
Let's what from there, how you went to your property purchase in South Carolina.
Yeah, so in 2018, I moved into the duplex, and that's when I was introduced to Jerome Myers. So I actually was introduced to him through an old coworker from that first job. I watched him on Instagram for like 6 months. I met him. I asked that coworker, hey, who is this guy you're posting about? He introduced us. I met him. Then I watched him for like 6 months. I did not sign up for coaching or anything. I'm just like, I'm gonna see what you're about. So anyway, I got hooked up with coaching from him because I was really interested in real estate at this point. I had been listening to Bigger Pockets. I had joined a local RIA at that point, but I still wasn't like connecting the dots fully. So through him, I was really pursuing flips at that point. Like I was like, I want to flip something and going down the single family path. But he was the one who introduced me to multifamily. And so he had a deal that he came across in Greensboro, which was my first multifamily. And that was in 2019. That was a 10 unit in Greensboro. And so effectively, I was able to learn the process through that purchase. I was able to drive down there because it was only 3 hours away from me and meet the previous owners. I was able to, do the walkthrough and the inspection, talk to the property management team that was local, get a sense of the environment down there, eat at the local places, kind of walk through North Carolina A&T, which is a prominent school there. It really just made me feel comfortable with the investment. And then the numbers at that time made sense. So he was explaining everything to me and I felt confident in the investment. The thing that I like about multifamily and real estate in general is that it's tangible. So I do invest in stocks, but you can't touch that. You can't touch those stocks. There's just tickers right across the screen. I like that I could go down and visit and walk the properties and kind of see what's going on. So I got into that 10 unit in 2019 where I am the key principal. And I didn't do my next deal in Stanley, North Carolina until last year. So that was a 30 unit just outside of Charlotte. And I'm like, it's still a joint venture, but I'm an LP, right? I'm a small investment on that deal. But that's how I kind of got into that. Jerome introduced me to that and it's been cool. I haven't, it's interesting, but I closed in October 2019 and then, COVID hit in February, March. So as soon as we were starting to get stabilized, COVID hits and people stopped paying. And so we did have a capital call, which happens more often in a joint venture. It shouldn't happen. Ideally, you don't want it to happen, guys, right? But it happens more often in a joint venture than it will in a syndication. So we had to put up a little bit more money to stabilize it, over the course of COVID. And so now at this point, I want to say we're 90% occupied and everybody's paying either on some type of payment plan or paying. So we've kind of stabilized from COVID at this point.
So I know you met Jerome and you met other people like that. How has coaching affected you? What's the benefit of coaching for you in your career?
Yeah. So I would say coaching is what expedited my path into multifamily. So I didn't know anything about multifamily, even listening to podcasts and going to the meetups, because most of your local RIAs, they're going to be talking single family, right? You really have to look hard. Well, now not so much because we're all virtual, right? But back then, it was hard to find the multifamily meetups. There was only one in my area, and they didn't even meet that often. They still don't meet often. But I would say like having that coach, it really allowed me to expedite my progress. And so he was able to give me access to his tools. So things like the MLS, he had access to the MLS at the time. He had access to Rentometer, his network. So lenders, again, when I was with him, I was looking primarily at single family flips, right? So he introduced me to contractors, lenders, realtors, pretty much all the tools that I needed to get the deal done. And he was just able to kind of make those soft introductions for me, which really helps open the door to opportunity. I would also say that having a coach or a mentor also just gives you a sounding board. I think so often we get inside our heads and we're just talking to ourselves about all these ideas that we have, and they might not necessarily be the best course of action for what you're trying to do. So having somebody who can be a sounding board for you, sift through all of the craziness that goes on in my head, my thoughts be all over the place, and help you to clearly identify the next step that will really help you to propel, I think is worth it. Because otherwise you'd be like most of us, like most people, just listening to podcasts and trying to piece it together. But you really need someone who is 2 or 3 steps ahead of you, to help you get where you're going, to be a coach or a mentor. You really don't want somebody who's on your level. They're good as far as being an accountability partner. You really want somebody who's 2 or 3 steps ahead of you to be kind of your mentor or coach.
Definitely agree with you about that. So, man, you got a 10 unit property, you got a duplex, you got the 30 unit property.
Mm-hmm.
What is your biggest takeaway from those experiences? Not necessarily, the tenant problems, you talked about that, but just going through the process of underwriting or things like that. What was the biggest takeaway from that part of it, of, going from the underwriting part to the purchasing part? Was you very nervous about everything, or was it natural for you, or, just talk to us a little bit about the process for you.
I would say I was not really nervous because, again, it was tangible. I felt like even if catastrophe hit with insurance or something, I could get some of my money back, if not all of it, or rebuild it, right? Figure it out. I also felt comfortable in my partners, because I had watched Jerome for a long time. Like I said, I saw that he was consistent. I saw kind of what he was doing in the market. So I felt comfortable with him. And then I was able to get the experience of partnering with other people and kind of bringing people into the deal with me. So I had to find people to invest with me. And so what that really did is it forced me to stretch myself, because I was ready to just put up all the money myself. Well, partnership is essential in multifamily. Partnership is essential in real estate as a whole, but it really made me get out of my comfort zone as far as asking people for money. Like, hey, you told me you were interested in this. Do you have 25 grand? Do you got 50 grand? Like, having those awkward conversations, it kind of helps you to break out of your comfort zone. I would say with the underwriting part, it really was my first time seeing the numbers presented that way, right? I had only been seeing single family things. So I was doing, 70% of the ARV minus repairs. And I'm looking at single family, numbers. It was a lot of numbers to look at, a lot of numbers in underwriting. And I think like the thing that I've learned from that is really something that you have to do frequently. For anybody who's trying to learn underwriting, which I'm still growing in that area, you need to be looking at, I was told you need to be looking at 15 to 20 deals a month. So that's multiple deals a week. You're not going to be confident in your underwriting if you're doing 1 deal a month or every other month. Like, you're not going to know your numbers. The other thing in that process is that I didn't realize how long it takes, right? So back then you could buy a house in 30 to 45 days. This process, it might have taken like almost 6 months. From the time I heard about it to going back and forth on, confirming the number with the seller, to inspection, to getting with the lenders, making sure we're all approved for the loan, to actually signing. It was a long process. I'm like, why haven't we closed yet? Like, what's going on? We should be done with this already. So trying to just develop some patience to get through the process that I wasn't that familiar with in the first place. I was just like, this is taking too long. Like, we're not going to close this deal. So I would say those are really my lessons learned. And then I didn't know at that time that every year these people are going to come back to me and ask me for my personal statement. So they're reaching out to me and they're like, Tiffany, we need your tax returns. We need to know how much stocks you got, how many other assets you got, what's your IRA and your 401k, and how, what are your debts and all this stuff. And I'm like, why are you asking me for all this stuff? We already are qualified. Like, the regular bank is not going to ask you for that for your mortgage on your house. And so it's helping me to be more organized. Like you got to pull that stuff together, some of that stuff together anyway for your taxes, but it helps you to be more organized and more aware of your net worth, right? Because it's interesting when you see the numbers on that spreadsheet and you see how they're calculating and you're like, oh, is this my net worth? Like, to me, that was a good aha moment to be like, I actually have a positive net worth. I never thought about that before, even though I've been introduced to like savings and investing and stuff like that. I think a lot of people don't pay attention to their net worth. And in the multifamily space, everybody knows now, they're looking for accredited investors. Well, what does that mean? You got to have a certain net worth or you got to make a certain amount per year. And so I learned a lot of that, I would say, in the first year, just kind of focusing in on those numbers, making sure that the banks wanted to deal with me, right? Having good credit, having some money in the bank, not going negative on my investment and stuff like that. So I would say that's what I learned.
Wow, some great nuggets right there. Great nuggets. Love it. So final question, what is next for you? Where do you want to see yourself in the next couple of years? What is your goals and what are you trying to strive for?
So I am working with a coach. My coach is trying to get me to narrow my focus, guys. So everybody is going to tell you to niche down. I don't want to niche down, but I have to niche down. Okay. I'm struggling with that right now. And I have to decide if I'm going to focus on multifamily solely or if I'm going to focus on single family and like fix and flips. So I'm going to niche down to multifamily because that's really the direction I wanted to go in. And really, I am focusing on getting stronger in my markets and making better connections. So no offense to meetups like this. I love groups like this because it helps you expand your network, you expand your knowledge, but like really honing in on who you need to connect with. Like, so for me, I am intentionally looking for property managers and brokers, right? I'm also looking for wholesalers, but those are a little bit harder to find so far for me in my experience. Looking for property managers and brokers in my network, right? I need people who are familiar with my area such that I can get to that 15 to 20 deals a month that I'm analyzing, right? So that's really my focus right now. More deal flow. Everybody has a problem with deal flow. You got to be consistently reaching out to these brokers and property managers and building relationships. The other thing that I'm focusing on that I've just been struggling with is just social media, right? So I get such lovely newsletters from you, Aaron, and I'm on Lee's list, and Lawrence has beefed up his list. Like, I don't have any of that stuff set up to like fully beef up my CRM. So I'm kind of putting the pieces together to grow, if that makes sense. So I've been working on things like the lead magnet, my website, my CRM, following up with people after I talk to them to make sure I'm still giving them the touch points. But more importantly than that is just like deal flow. So I would say the next year for me is I'm trying to take down deals. I want to say on my own. It's not really on my own, but I want to take down deals and be the finder of the deal, build the right partnerships because I can't do it all. So like building the right team that's looking for the same things. I am a mom, right? My 16-month is keeping me busy and I'm really just getting some time back, right? He's going to daycare finally. I had him for the whole first 16 months. So really managing my time well and taking the right steps, the right actions that's going to move the needle, that's going to move the ball forward. We talked about it before and I know you wanted me to repeat it, Aaron, but I have filled my time in the last year with so much education, right? And education is not bad, right? But I've been on so many Clubhouse meetings, so many meetups, listened to so many podcasts, watched so much YouTube, okay? None of that is going to help me get a deal, y'all. None of that's going to help you get a deal. It is one component of a much larger picture. And so for me, I am actually scaling back from a lot of those meetups because I need to time block and make sure that I'm using my time in the right way that's going to get me results. So sitting here, your 10th meetup of the week, guys, is not going to get you. It's not going to get you that deal, unless you want to be a passive investor, right? If you want to be passive and you want to find deals to invest in, that's what you need to do. If you want to be active and you want to find your own deals and you're trying to grow your presence, you're trying to become the authority in your market, you got to sit down and get off of Zoom. You got to get off of Clubhouse, and you got to dig into these websites. You got to dig into CBRE and LoopNet and Crexy. You got to make phone calls to the brokers, make phone calls to the property managers. You have to connect with the people who actually want to invest in your market and the people that you can partner with. A lot of that stuff just doesn't happen on these meetups and stuff like that. So I'm personally going to take a step back from that just to refocus, make sure I'm focusing on the right things.
I totally get it. I totally get it. My coach, I think you might know who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about, I talked to him more about time blocking and things like that. I think that's so important, is the time block, because, you can get caught up with different things, and now the time has gone away. Like we talked about, before we started to meet up. So I totally understand where you're coming from. We got to take massive action. Massive action doesn't mean just reading and never doing anything else. You gotta, like you said, it's different steps you got to do, and you got to put them all together. So totally understand that, and great insight too from everything you're saying. So look, you answered a lot of my questions, just digging deep about your career, where you're going to, great insight on everything you said. So I'm gonna open up for the attendees. So if anybody has a question for Tiffany, please take it away.
Or any questions in general, guys. So if I can answer it, I will.
Tiffany, how you doing? Thanks for the presentation. Thank you, Aaron. When you started looking at multifamily, and I know you said you want, to go for 15 to 20 deal flows, a month, did you have a certain number you were looking for? A comfort number? Like some people may say 100 units. Some people may say, I just want to have enough to cover my expenses and live off, or, was it a certain 10,000 a month? What, you don't have any set number right now.
I don't have that set number right now. I think as you grow, you get exposed, as you grow and you come to meetups and you're exposed to different people and mindsets. There's a heavy mindset in leaving corporate America, right? So I'm not gonna tell you how much I make because I'm not accredited, so that tells you that. But I make a good amount of money, such that a deal or two is not going to replace my income. And really, multifamily is a slow hustle, right? So flipping, you could flip a house in 6 months, something like that, and that's kind of a faster cash flow avenue for you. Multifamily, you might see your disbursements quarterly. If you deal with some people, they do them monthly. Very few people I've seen. But you're waiting, 3 years for that return of capital, and then maybe 5 to 7 years to be out of the deal fully for a lot of these deals, right? So you're not going to really replace your income that quickly. For me, I like my job. My job is pretty cool. I'm in sales. I get to travel. I support the government. I get to eat a lot, drink a lot, talk to a lot of people to support some cool missions for the government. I don't plan to quit anytime soon, right? I'd have to do a crap ton more deals to leave. Like it's not feasible for me, but I haven't, not feasible for me right now. Maybe I will reevaluate that in 5 to 10 years, especially as my son is growing and, being away from home and stuff like that. But I don't have a magic number. I just know for me, it's always been about retirement, because I'm in a space where there's no pensions, for me where I am. What I put into my 401k or IRA or the stock market or whatever investments is what I put in, and I try to get the best returns, and I'm trying to minimize taxes. And everything I do really at this point is for my son. So I got to set him up with his 529 or a trust or things like that, Coverdell, make sure that he can get to college and make sure, he can start off in a better position than me. But I don't have I don't have a number of doors. I didn't back then. I still don't. Like, I'm not saying, oh, I want to own 1,000 doors by this year, because the thing that I've learned, I'll actually backtrack. I used to say that. I was like, oh, well, I want to do, my goal for the year is I want 20 doors, right? That's so arbitrary. Like, it's better to say that you want maybe a certain amount of income, or you want to make a certain profit, because the number of doors doesn't matter. You can make that profit or that acquisition fee or whatever off of a 10 unit, or you can make it off of a 100 unit. It depends on your market that you're in. And it really depends on the actions that you're taking, obviously, to reach your goals. But I kind of stopped saying I aspire to have X number of goals.
So
I'm looking to make good deals. Huh?
So your excitement for flipping, or you have more energy for flipping as opposed to maybe buy and hold and wait for a process. Like, you have a certain niche. You said you're going to go to multifamily, but you still look like you enjoy the flipping part.
Yeah, but so no. Yes and no. I was chasing the flipping, but I haven't done a flip. Everything I've done has been turnkey. With my own money. I was chasing the flips because, as you all have seen, I'm sure you've seen some of these deals, you need $50K, $100K to buy into these deals. So even if you're making six figures, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, there's only so many 50 and 100K deals that you can do in a year or two, right? You got to be really frugal, really aggressive. And so whereas I'm very good at saving, there's only so many deals I can do, and you don't get that cash flow back, right? Like, you're not seeing that return of capital for 3 years or so, right? So you're gonna run out, most of us gonna run out of money in that time period. So that's what the flips and stuff might help. But no, I'm focused on multifamily, and I would say I'm hoping for some acquisition fees and stuff like that, right? Which will help me to get into the next deal and then just selling more storage for the company I work with.
Yeah, I've heard people go flipping to raise capital and to get into different deals. I've heard of that.
Yeah.
So I understand. Thank you so much.
But I'm hearing something that's somewhat troubling to me.
Okay.
One of the two things is like, it's very rare. Tiffany and I work for the same company, but I'm 22 years into my career, right? I've worked for, let's say, 10 different companies, right? And what I have done is I've taken all of those, every company that I work for, I always contribute to my 401k, because the company is typically going to give a match. But 9 of those companies, right, they've matched my money. And when I leave those companies, I can move those funds over to a self-directed IRA. And then you can use that self-directed IRA to invest in real estate, which is what I've done. And, to date, I'm on my 22nd syndication. And all of those syndications are monthly or quarterly sending in their cash flow distributions. And now, in the last 2 or 3 deals, now I'm on the GP side, because I'm able to bring more and more capital by showing people how I've moved into real estate, right? So there is a way. I make a lot of money too, right? I can't continue to invest in deals just from living frugally, right? Money runs out. But, a lot of people haven't explored taking those stranded 401ks and using that money to invest in multifamily just the same, because, right, when you think about multifamily, the last 4 to 5 years have been very good. Last year, we exited 3 deals. The lowest one, and all of these were like, 25-month holds. The lowest one was a 1.56 equity multiple. So the equity multiple is what you're missing with the flips, right?
Yeah.
And because we started out flipping as well, and also having a high income, the one thing that I had to learn the hard way is the fact that flipping means that you're going to be taxed at whatever your tax rate is.
Yep.
So flipping turns into income that you have to pay off at that higher level. So if you're at 150,000, that's probably going to translate to about the 24, 28 tax bracket. That's additional money where no tax have been deducted, but now you're going to have to pay. So after we did 3 flips in 1 year, right? Like we took on all of that risk. We did 3 flips. We made $100 and something thousand. And guess what? I wrote a big whopping check to Uncle Sam. And I was literally nervous and not spending the money because I had no idea of how much I was going to have to write a check to Uncle Sam for. And that's the reason why I got out of flipping, was because similar to Tiffany, I kind of sort of like what I do. It does take up a lot of time, right? And the one thing that I would transition from is if I could do my job in 4 hours, I would probably say I'll do my job for the rest of my life. But the problem is, you know, when COVID wasn't there, I was probably in 3 cities in a week, at least 2 cities per week, but I was probably in 3 cities a week because I'm also in sales and I run a team and I had to be there for those teams and closing deals, right? So I think that there are other ways to do it. You just got to get creative on your strategy. And the one thing, Tiffany, I would say is this: you have to have that number. And I think for most people, that number that they have is if they calculate all of their monthly expenses. When you have enough passive income coming in, right, to cover your monthly expenses, then you have options, right? Options for freedom. Because once your expenses are paid, right, you can then decide, well, you know what? I can take a break. I can walk away, right, from this and go and do something else. So I would have to say you have to set that number know what it is, keep it top of mind, because that's one of the, I don't think that you would work, right, if all of your bills were paid, right? And once you get to that number, you can walk away. There are so many other things that open up. And the last one, don't set up a 529, go with a privatized bank. Because the thing about the privatized banking is the fact that the insurance policy is written for 110 to 121 years. And that's a way that you can give off, that's a way you can generate wealth for your family, because everybody's going to die and that death benefit rolls over. And also, while your son is growing up, because we've done this for our 2 kids, is we bought them insurance policies, and we will have purchased 2 insurance policies by the time they go to school. And we'll take out loans against those insurance policies, right, so that they can pay for their school. We'll pay back the loans. But those loans, all of that capacity, we own. My wife and I own it until we pass on, and then it flows over to our kids. So we probably have about 6 different insurance policies at this point in time. And every time I can get an insurance policy, I get another one.
Is that considered an infinite banking, or is that a separate type of insurance?
No.
Okay.
But the thing is, when it comes to infinite banking, there are so many different ways to set it up, right? And if you go talk to an insurance broker who's not familiar with the insurance brokering, they're going to come to you and say, well, how about this? You need to cover this if you pass, right? And all of a sudden, you start buying an insurance policy that's not designed for infinite banking. So you have to find a specialist in infinite banking, which I was able to find, right? And put in that policy. The long story short is you have to go with a mutual company, not a shareholder company. And when you take out the loans, you want to go with a company that's the non-direct recognition versus direct recognition, because it depends on your cash value and how it's paying dividends. So there's a difference between direct recognition and non-direct recognition. But I would say that that's an alternative, because you have that insurance policy for the rest of your life. You can use it for the cash value as you see fit, right? And that just works out. And just with the 529, just say, Ricky decides that he doesn't want to go to college, that then has to convert into an IRA, and you could only draw funds from it when they reach 59 and a half. Right. So with the insurance policies, you have more control.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's something that I've been looking at. So I've been talking to Northwestern Mutual for the infinite banking.
Northwestern Mutual was the company who I first went to. And then they started asking me all of those questions. There's a lady down in Virginia Beach who I'll connect you with. She'll run the different policies for you. Really, the best, we have ours with Penn Mutual, but there's another insurance company called Lafayette Life who you want to check out. But there's a lady in Virginia Beach who I'll drop you an email with, and she knows what she's doing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Stay away from Northwestern Mutual. They almost got me for like $17,000 a year, and I was going to have the wrong policies.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was a guy who was local here. He moved in some of these circles, so I won't mention the name, but I was hearing conflicting things about being able to pull the money out and leverage it for investments. So I haven't pulled the trigger yet, and I'm actually not eligible I'm eligible at a higher cost, right? But due to some health things, but for my son, definitely I was looking at that option. And I guess just to piggyback off some of the things you said. So I've been in my 10 unit since 2019. I've not had any distributions, no disbursements. So I can't tell you what that looks like. I can't tell you what a check like that looks like to factor it into my number.
Were you able to calculate depreciation?
Yeah, as far as taxes, you mean?
Yeah, because that's a paper loss, but it comes back to real money when you file your taxes. So
yeah. So I am getting some benefit on my taxes, but I haven't received any disbursements yet to kind of factor that in. I know it's a thing. It's going to happen on this 30 unit, hopefully. But I can't speak to that yet. And so, that is something to be aware of, that you can get into these deals. I don't think I got into a bad deal. I think COVID happened and people stopped paying. The world stopped paying, right? Like everybody stopped paying. And so we just kind of had to weather that for that investment. But I do also contribute to my 401k. And that was something that I was thinking about changing up. So right now I max out my 401k, which I don't know what it is this year, 19 or
$20,500.
Yeah, it goes up every year. So I do max that out. Once you make too much money, you can no longer contribute to the Roth, I believe. And so I've been working with my financial advisor as far as, calculating when to start doing a backdoor Roth. The other thing that I was looking at was setting up a trust. Not a trust, sorry. The self-directed IRAs through Quest or Equity Trust or something like that. So I've been kind of looking at some of these other options. Go ahead, Lee.
I got you there too, because Equity Trust, whenever you want to move into an investment, they're custodians and you have to send them your investment. They do a due diligence for it, right? And then a couple of days later, they'll make a decision. If you want to get money and you need money in like 3 days, they're going to then charge you a wiring fund, right? So what I did is I did a checkbook self-directed IRA, which means that if I have an investment that I want to move into, I write the check and it goes into the investment. The other day, I needed to make another $25,000 investment. I wrote the check, took it to the bank, it was already there. So when it comes to self-directed IRAs, the one thing that I say is if you trust yourself, go with the checkbook. If you don't trust yourself, go with the custodian where they do all of the due diligence and send you the money, and it takes a lot of time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, Lee, wouldn't that be the EQRP?
Well, I don't. And Robert, that's a very good question. I have the book upstairs on QRP and EQRP, but those are qualified retirement plans, which means that there's going to have to be that overhead, because I was going to use a QRP when I wanted to buy a business, right? in order to do that, you have to set up the structure such that it is a retirement plan. Now, if you buy a business and you use that same retirement plan that you use for yourself, you have to offer that to your employees just the same. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't investigate that so much, is because I don't really need that at this point in time. The self-directed IRA has worked out for me pretty well, especially the checkbook IRA, because sometimes when you're doing your due diligence on these syndications, you can come up to the funding deadline. And with me, if I need to wire the funds, I just go to the bank and say, hey, let's move $50,000 over here or move it somewhere else, right? So if the self-directed works for you, then I really don't know why you would have to set up a QRP or EQRP like that. But, you know, Robert, I'm just speaking from my personal experience, of course.
Yeah,
I haven't read it.
I understand. I'm reading the book and might do something later this year with that QRP. But in my business, I have no employees, and they have that checkbook style retirement plan.
But Robert, as you future-proof your business, right? If your business does grow to the point where you're taking on employees and things of that sort, that's what I say when you have to talk to that specialist who can then say, well, all right, what are you looking to grow your business into, such that we can set up the structures now that if you do grow and meet those numbers, you don't have to make a pivot, right? We can set it up while it's small, have it grow. There's not going to be a pivot that you have to introduce at some later point in time.
Okay. Okay, so the self-directed IRA is different than the QRP, Qualified Retirement Plan.
Oh, yeah. You have to set up a 401k or something similar in order to go with that QRP. The overhead, like literally for my self-directed IRA, I might pay $250 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's it. Every year they send me an email that asks me to tell them how much money I have in my plan. I write that number down, and that's the only overhead that I have. Mm-hmm. But again, you know, my financial situation is different than others in that I don't need the money, and I will never, ever go into my self-directed account and write a check, even if I need a loan for $1,000. Because once you do that, the Department of Labor can come after you and say, well, you used the funds and here are the penalties and all of those types of things that you have to be very careful of. So I say to people, if you trust yourself, go with the self-directed IRA with the checkbook. If you don't trust yourself, go with the custodian who's going to put those guardrails in place for you.
How about for tax purposes, which would be better? Because the reason I'm looking at the QRP, I got so many years in a government job. Sorry, Tiffany, for taking this off.
I like the conversation.
Sorry,
I think it helps
Aaron.
Everyone.
We're diving into all this retirement and self-directed talk.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead, Robert.
So I'm coming from a government job. I'm about to retire maybe later this year. I got almost 28 years in.
No.
So in government, we have a deferred compensation. You know, it's not the 401k. I got my pension, but on the side, I did a deferred comp. So the bad thing is when you retire, I can't put new money into that. Mm-hmm. So, but I can park it there and keep it there, but I don't want to do that. I want to put it in a fund that I can control. That's why I was looking at the QRP.
Well, I don't know. I live in Northern Virginia, which is right outside the DC corridor. And I have never worked for the government because they just move too slow for me. Right. So I wouldn't be able to advise you there. But one of the things that I always advise people, especially when they're trying to make the decision as to whether or not they're going to move that money, is look at their fees, right? Because the mutual fund companies, they load you up with fees. You have to pay a 12(1)(b) fee, which is for advertising. Why should I have to pay the fee that they use for advertising? And Tiffany and I are both at the same company. Every time we get paid, they make a deposit into our 401k. There's a record keeping fee. And it's, it's $1.40, $1.50 every so often. And I'm like, literally, if you were to go to the SEC website and search for, I have it and I could send it to you, but if you see how much those fees that the mutual fund companies are charging you, it literally erodes your growth over a 30-year period. And it's significant, $20,000, $40,000 over that time. So if you can get away from those jokers who are going to be just, siphoning off monies from your account, because time value of money, the more time you have, the longer, the better it can grow, right? These guys are siphoning off that money on a monthly basis, and they're doing it, via 1 million to 5 or 10 million people. So those $1 excerpts that they're taking a month, you multiply that by 15 million people, they're making a good living off of it.
Yeah, of course. That's what Damien talks about in his book. I'm like halfway through his book. The QRP.
I'll read it with you.
Yeah.
I'll read it with you just so that I understand it. The book is upstairs. I got it when I was in 2020 at the Best Ever Conference.
Yeah.
I just haven't read it because it wasn't something it wasn't a tool that I needed.
Yeah. He talks about that, Lee, about, millions of Americans got their money in 401ks, and these companies are making a ton of fees, where if you changed it over to a QRP or self-directed, you become your own bank, and you have that checkbook authority to make your own investments. So that's the beauty I was looking at, and what I wanted to move my money into probably later this year or early next year.
Well, that's why Wall Street calls 401k mutual fund money dumb money, right? Because they know that everybody has been told all their entire life, go into savings, go into savings. I did a presentation last week for my wife's church, and I pulled down Bank of America. And if you have like $100,000 in a Bank of America account, they're only going to give you 0.05 on your money, right? The best. And that's like $100,000 or better, right? So I said to them, this is how much that the national banks, Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, this is how much they're going to give you. And we pulled it up on the website if you have $100,000 sitting there.
Yep. And
I said, if you go to a credit union, you might get better. You might get 1%, maybe 2%. Mm-hmm. And I said to them, do you realize that in the fourth quarter of 2021, inflation was at 7%? I said, if you're going to leave your money into this account, you might as well go to Vegas and have a good damn time, because your purchasing power is being eroded, right? You can buy less today with $1 than you could yesterday. Mm-hmm. So I always say what I'm talking to Tiffany about is the privatized banking or infinite banking, rather than you use the traditional banks as a savings vehicle. You use the insurance policy as a savings vehicle. And then with the savings policy, those insurance policies, they never go down in value. They only go up. And it's my understanding with the whole policy is it can guarantee a certain dividend for a number of years. And what happens is there's something called the paid up additions, where the mutual companies, remember I said that there's a difference between the mutual company and the shareholder company. The mutual company pays the policyholders the dividends, right, on an annual basis, whereas the shareholder companies pay the stockholders the dividends. So that's the real difference. And that's why you have to work with a specialist. And just because mutual is in the name doesn't mean that it's a mutual company. Northwest Mutual is not a mutual company.
Well, look, guys, we're going to end the meetup as far as on Zoom. We're going to go to the after party right now, but I just want to thank everybody for coming. Thank you, Miss Tiffany, for all your knowledge that you spend. Thank you, Lee, for spitting that great knowledge as well. And I think that people need to hear about the banks. I mean, that's so true. That don't know about. I mean, we've always been taught, putting the money in the bank, but it's not growing. It's not growing. And
it's not.
And we should all, teach that to others because and get it out that myth that your money's going to grow while in the bank. So thank you guys so much. God bless you and take care.